So in my pain is temporary speakdom, I asked for people to submit their, I guess you can say, submit their topic ideas and things you want me to talk about. And some of the things that y'all submitted are things that I can't really talk about because I've never experienced them before. I remember one person was like, can you give me some advice on how to create a manga and pitch it to Hollywood? I've never done that before. I'm not the right person to ask about that. But some of the questions I can answer, or at least try to answer. So good luck with that, by the way. I think, number one, you shouldn't give up. But when I wanted to tackle this episode, or this is going to be a bonus speak thumb, because I think I'm still going to do one on Saturday morning. So with this bonus, real talk, I want to discuss there's one question that really resonated with me because it really applies to me. And the thing about these speakdoms is they're very, very personal. You find out things about me that many people don't know, and some do know. And I'm not really afraid to talk about it. I used to be at one time, but I'm not really afraid to talk about it anymore because I have nothing to hide. At one time, you're afraid to say this about yourself, and sometimes you're afraid to point out your flaws. But I've never really been afraid of talking about it, just talking about it publicly. But right now, I think it's really a benefit to helping people. So Jack Forshner, and that's why I do these videos, to help people. He writes, maybe you could talk about how to break out of the cycle of overthinking into anxiety, into depression with relationships and career-wise, and renew your outlook on life. I think that would really help me and a lot of others. Thanks. The reason why this resonated with me so much, why that question really hit me, is because one of the issues that I have, that I think a lot of people also have, of course, it ain't just me, but one of the things that I have that a lot of folks don't know is that I tend to have a lot of, that sometimes when I have anxiety and when I have, when something traumatic is happening, I tend to catastrophize things. And what I mean by that is, something that isn't really a huge deal in my own head, I overthink it into becoming a huge deal. And so basically what that does is that triggers my depression and it triggers my anxiety. And all of that really comes from defense mechanisms. That's really what, a lot of folks talk about ego. And ego is not really, ego is not, it's been kind of twisted into being a bad word. But if you actually look into the word ego, it's actually multifaceted. It's actually pretty complex. But ego is just the way that we protect ourselves, that we defend ourselves. And a lot of times people that have, problems with anxiety, it's driven by ego, and not, again, understand the word ego is not a dirty word. It's more so it's driven by your defense mechanisms. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've gotten into fights with my own friends because of my own, defense mechanisms, because of my own ego. It's happened a lot. And a lot of it's just defense mechanism. I know I'm hurt for whatever reason, and I think that I'm not getting my just desserts. It's happened so much, and it's something I've been working on actively for years to fix. So Jack wants to know how to break out of the cycle of overthinking into anxiety, into depression with relationships and career-wise. So this is a problem I'm still working through, okay? And like I said, it is a catastrophic kind of mentality to where, for example, I'll give you an example. Last September on my Geekdom 101 channel, I got 5 copyright strikes from Shueisha. And even though I was resourceful enough to talk to my attorney and talk to YouTube and talk to several people and got it resolved within 4 or 5 days, during those 4 or 5 days, it was hell. And I'm sure, Jack, you can relate to this and others can too, where I'm sitting here scared like, oh my God, is the 4 years I put into my channel, is it done? Am I screwed here? You know what I'm saying? Did I lose everything I worked for? Am I going to have to start from scratch? Because it's happened to some people. And I was scared. I was scared to death, even though there was a time there where it was a strong possibility I would have lost everything. Luckily, that's not what happened at all. And I had a lot of friends. I had a very strong support system to help me out and very powerful friends to help me out. And that's kind of what you have to remember. Whenever you're catastrophizing something, whenever you're overthinking something, because we all overthink. I certainly overthink. I can't say everyone, but I certainly overthink. It's good to have friends there to kind of bring you down to reality and not get your head stuck in the clouds. One of the pieces of advice that I was given for how to resolve this is write down, and this is a good idea, and it actually worked. When you have some time, write down what's the worst that could happen. So let's say You know, somebody says something and it threatens you or something, or something bad happens to you and you're worried. Like you say you heard that you're gonna get fired. I'm just throwing that out there. Sit down and write down like what's the worst thing that could happen. And when you write it down and reflect on it, there's a good chance that you're going to realize that's probably not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times when things go bad, the worst case scenario is not always what happens. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But it'll give you clarity in your mind if you write down what the worst thing that could happen is, and then you at least, if you suspect it could happen, at least you're prepared for it. And if you don't suspect it could happen, at least it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, at least you're going to be, it's not even a big deal. You're going to get past it. So that's one piece of advice I can give you. I can't tell you to stop overthinking because I overthink and my friends are always telling me not to do it. They're always saying, no, you're overthinking it. You got to unplug. You know, you're letting this ruin your day. Because at the end of the day, content creators, public ones like us, we're still people. And this whole idea of allowing something on your YouTube channel to bother you is such BS, because as a human being who has defense issues, who has insecurity issues, anxiety issues, things are going to bother you. You know what I mean? You can't help that. Obviously, as more time goes by, I have been able to train myself on how to deal with it better. But man, sometimes you just can't. So the breaking of the cycle of overthinking can be broken, at least for a while, if you sit down and logistically write down what the worst thing that could happen is, some scenarios that you think could be terrible, and then you kind of reflect on it and say, nah, it's probably not going to happen like that. Or you can at least write down a way to get out of that hole. Remember what I said in that one video, pain is temporary. So if you end up in a hole, if you end up in a negative situation, it doesn't mean it's a permanent situation. In fact, very few things are permanent. You know, I've said that before. Sometimes there is chronic pain you have to deal with. Sometimes there is, you know, the death of a family member or a pet or a friend. Those things hurt and they don't go away. The pain does not go away right away, if ever. But most hardships, especially career-wise, and even relationships, are temporary. Now, obviously, when you go through a breakup, it may not be temporary. So you never want to trick yourself into thinking that it's going to get better in the future, because even though it might get better, if you're constantly waiting for that person to come back, and you're looking at a very dangerous situation at that point, because now you're tricking yourself and you're getting a banana in the tailpipe, if you know what I'm saying. You're setting yourself up for failure. But what you want to do is try to come closer to acceptance of the situation ahead of anything else. You know what I'm saying? And really, he also asked about renewing your outlook on life. That is something that might take time. Some people find religion. Some people find friendship. Some people find therapy. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do about this. I have friends of mine who are totally into the Bible, and whenever they're feeling down, they read the Bible and they feel better. You know, I have other friends of mine who are Muslim. They're into the Quran. It makes them feel better. Some other friends of mine, even though they are religious, other friends, they might not find satisfaction in just reading the Bible. Maybe they have to go talk to a friend, and sometimes you have to do everything. But the main thing is that, yes, I overthink. Jack Forshner, I'm sure you overthink. And the best thing to do is try to calm down and try to just logically look at the situation at hand and think, okay, what's the worst that could happen? And then when you realize that the worst that could happen is either unrealistic or highly unlikely, or at least something that's manageable, right? Like, for example, let's say that you have like a stomach ache. What's the worst that can happen? Oh my God, I have cancer. You probably don't have cancer. However, at the very least, it might motivate you to go to the doctor, and then you might find out what you actually have, take a few pills, and you're good. You know what I'm saying? Like, that happens so much. You know, that's called being a hypochondriac, which is a form of overthinking. That's like the definition of like overthinking. So when bad stuff happens, it goes back to my original message. There's no way to avoid bad things happening, no matter how much money you have, how many friends you have, or how much you might think that you're, quote, happy. Something will always come along to try to knock you down. And sometimes you will get knocked down. And it reminds me of that Rocky quote from Rocky Balboa when he says, you know, it doesn't matter how hard you hit. It matters how many times you can get hit and keep moving. And just remember that sometimes when you go through life, you're going to get hit in the face, yo. It's going to happen. You're going to get punched right in the mouth. And it's not about punching back, even though you should. It's about taking the punch and showing life, you ain't nothing. You ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? And it's not that easy. I'm trying to simplify things here because I can't really, I don't know if making like a 45-minute video on this is a good idea here. I'm not going to make this video 45 minutes. But that's kind of the easy way of breaking out of overthinking and anxiety and depression. That's the easiest way that I know of to do that. And you have to always remember, that it's just temporary. I always say that, and it's true. I live by that. You can overthink things and think of all these crazy scenarios, and it could keep you up at night, and that's not good. And there are medications you can take to help you sleep. I mean, there's ways around that. There are ways to fix things. There's all kinds of medication you can take for all kinds of different issues. I'm usually against taking too much medication. Like I'm not really a big pharmacy guy, even though I am on some medication right now for pain. I'm not really a big guy when it comes to that stuff. But it's one of those things where if you have to take it, if you're prescribed that, like if you have depression, it's clinical depression, I would rather you take a pill than, do something to yourself or to somebody else. Even though at the same time, I'm against pills because they can make things worse. If you have an actual dopamine and serotonin problem, chemical imbalance in your body, you got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? And that's something that I can't tell you what to do on that. It's just, and there's too many people out there watching this, too many thousands of people watching this that come from different walks of life, different religions, different beliefs, different upbringings. So having just one solution to that is impossible. But I do think the universal solution is what I said earlier, which is I can't tell you to not overthink it. I can tell you to write down what you think is the worst that could happen, and then it'll give you clarity. It'll make you feel better. Like, oh, okay, this is probably not going to happen. So what am I worried about? Or at least if this does happen, I'm going to take these steps to making sure it either doesn't happen, or if it happens, I can land safely. I can cushion the fall. You know what I'm saying? That's the best way to look at it. So I hope this video helped. I really do hope that this bonus speakdom helped you deal with overthinking and anxiety. I've done a lot of videos on anxiety. I might do more on different aspects of it, but because I definitely have it. I you know what's crazy is I'm 34 right now. I didn't even know I had this, or it didn't really manifest until I turned like 30. Like I never had these problems in my 20s, dude. Like it's just funny. When I was in my 20s, man, I was what's the line from Top Gun that Kelly McGinnis says? I was larger than life. And then when you turn 30, man, something happens where it's just like, all right, like all these issues I had when I was younger are now cropping back up mentally. So, and some of y'all who aren't in your 30s yet, you might have to experience that at some point. Just letting you know. That might be an issue. And you definitely want to do your best to resolve it. Anyways, that's it. Thank you for watching. And I hope you have a great day. And I care about you. Remember that. And I mean that sincerely. I do care about you because one thing that I've learned about life is that even though a lot of y'all watching this and me, we may or may not ever meet. Sometimes we will. If you come to an event that I'm at or I see you, but I'm probably not going to meet most of you. And that sucks because I really want to. But at the end of the day, a lot of us on the web and a lot of us, who talk and stuff like that, we're here because we have something in common. And you'd be surprised as to how many things we have in common, more than you could even imagine. Yeah, I like nerd stuff like Dragon Ball and Marvel and Star Wars. I'm into all that nerd stuff, but you'd be surprised to how many things we have in common beyond that. You know what I mean? And these videos kind of will tell you. And I need people like y'all in my life because it helps me remember that I'm not alone. And you're not alone. Talk to you soon.